Gemara in Brachos daf ben Aleph from Beis ben Beis and Aleph. The sugya of pas abba bekisnin. Halacha after the whole shakli b'tari of the Gemara comes out. Tanya Rav Muna Amar Mishum Rav Yehuda pas abba bekisnin mevarchen aleo hamoitzi. V'Amar Shmuel halacha Rav Muna. Amar lahu ein halacha Rav Muna itmar. Maskana is we don't pass like Rav Muna. And pas abba bekisnin is a mezainis, and the birchas mein shalish. It's not like pas gomer, even though when it comes to other halachas, it is considered lechem. But when it gets to hilchas brachos, it's considered a class in and of itself, pas abba bekisnin, and the person makes a bayim name mezainis beforehand, and alavichi afterwards, unless he eats a shir kvi suda, in which case he treats it like regular pas, hamoitzi, washing, and benching. As far as what exactly pas abba bekisnin is what's the makeup of pas abba bekisnin? So the Beis Yosef brings three different shittas as to what pas abba bekisnin is. Beis Yosef says one shitta is that it is an isa, the shitta of the Tur. That's the first and foremost. The Tur says pas abba bekisnin hu pas she'asu kimin kisim maleim sukkar. They made like something that's filled, a pouch full of sukkar ushkedim ve'agoizim umini tavlin. That's what is considered pas abba bekisnin, which is only a mezainis, not a hamoitzi. That's one shita. The Rambam shita is that it's a pas, it's an isa sheniloisha b'dvash b'shemen. Not that it's filled with other minim sika. Rather, the isa itself is actually needed together with dvash, shemen, cholov, asheir ba mini tavlin v'afah. Actually part of the ingredients of the isa itself. It's not just a separate isa packed full of other ingredients, minim masika. Rather, the minim masika, the other ingredients are part and parcel of the isa itself, part of the ingredients of the dough. And finally, the third shita, Beis Yosef brings from Rabbeinu Hai, pas abba bekisnin hi ka'ochin, the pas bein metuvelas, bein she'enu metuvelas. It's made very hard, brittle. The kaisis and oisam, the beis hamishta, ushalai beis hamishta. It's something which is hard and brittle and it breaks very easily. That's something which is possible bekisnin. Three shitas, either mamula, the mina masika, or it's in the dough itself, or it's something which is pretzel-like, something which cracks very easily. Three different shitas for possible bekisnin. Now, these three shitas, the side of all of these three shitas, and the side of the sugya pas abba bekisnin as to why pas abba bekisnin is not treated like regular pas when it comes to hilchos brachos. So Rashi's lashon memalef amud beis is what's different about these minei pas is ma'achol mu'it. The derech was to eat a very small amount of it. The derech was not to be kaveh on it, to eat a large amount, a very small amount, and therefore it's nishtana from the regular halacha of pas. And we treat it like a regular mezainis, it's not like a hamoitzi. Beis Yosef says, along in a similar vein, Beis Yosef, when he's talking about the shittas HaRambam, he writes, Kivan she'ein derech bnei adam lekvayas udasan alav loichayvuhu levarach hamoitzi v'shalosh brachos. The derech of people is not to use it for kviyas suda. It's similar along the lines of Rashi ma'achol amuit, but more specifically, it's not the derech to be kviyas suda on it. Then a person would just treat it like pas, but otherwise, even though normally pas, even a small amount you make hamoitzi, since this is a type of pas which is ein derech bnei adam, the kvayis hudasan alav loichayvuhu levarach hamoitzi v'shalosh brachos. So it would stand to reason, logically, that this halacha isn't limited to these three different ifanim of pas. Would stand to reason that anything b'chol makim or b'chol zman, anything that a person, that the derech ha'olam, derech b'nei adam is to eat it, not b'derech kviyas suda, the derech is to eat only chol hamuit. That should also be b'chlal halacha pas abba bekisnin. Should also go into this category. It shouldn't be dafka limited to these three types of pas. That's what would stand to reason. It's something which is totally in derech ha'olam. And as a matter of fact, there are many gdolei achronim who work in this, who go with this shita. namely the Maimon Mordechai, and the one that's most often quoted in the later poskim is from the Ma'aseh Nisim and the Haggadah. This is the Baal Masidus, Baal Chavas Das, and his Haggadah, the Ma'aseh Nisim, he has Hilchos Brachos, and in the Kuntrus Achron he's ma'arich about this, and he writes that it's anything, any kind of pass. Anything that a person, that the derech of Bnei Adam is not to be kaveh suda on it, the bracha is mezainis and alamichi as opposed to hamoitzi, washing and benching. That's what would stand to reason. However, it is l'chayr muchach from the poskim, the earlier poskim, that they did not hold this way. The Beis Yosef, after he brings all the three shitas, the Beis Yosef says, halacha l'maisa, what did the person do? Halacha l'maisa, when it comes to something which fits into only one of the categories of these three different parts of Bekisnan, Beis Yosef says, halacha l'maisa, a person should make a mezainis and alamichi on all of them. Any one of them. Why? It's up to Beis Yosef, because Safek brachos lahakol. Safek brachos lahakol. So if the Safek sveika the dina, Safek brachos lahakol. What do you mean Safek brachos lahakol? It's a Safek? If the fact of the matter is that the halacha is based upon something which the derech ha'olam is not to be kaveh sudan, let's just go check what the metzias is. If the metzias is that the derech ha'olam is not to be kaveh sudan, any of these three different minei pas, so it's true by all of them. It's not really a machlokes ladina. There may be a machlokes in pirush hasugya. How do you teach the words pas abba bekisnin? But when it comes to halacha l'maisa, if the fact of the matter is, the metzias is, and all of these three different minim, the derech ha'olam is not to be kaveh suda, so the halacha should stand for all of them. Why is there a machlokes ladina? It's a machlokes and pshat and sugya. But halacha l'maisa, if the derech ha'olam is by all three of them not to be kaveh suda, so by all three of them you should make a mezainis. If the derech ha'olam is different, if things have changed, if people, the derech ha'suda is to be kaveh suda on something which is mamula, something which has sukkar mu'urav in the dvash, something which is like a pretzel-like material. So just go, let's go see, let's check it out. What the derech ha'olam is. Why is this called the sveika de dina that we should say safek brachas lahakol? It would seem from the Beis Yosef that this halacha possible bekisnin is limited to those minim, whichever single min the Gemara is talking about in the times of the Gemara, and that's the kviyas lahalacha l'doris. Whatever in the times of the Gemara the derech was not to be kaveh suda, that's the way it applies. That's the way it is. Adbiyas goyel. Whatever in the times of the Gemara the derech was to be kaveh suda is hamaitzi. Whatever wasn't derech to be kaveh suda is not hamaitzi. And that's the way it remains. It doesn't make a difference if people change, if times change. That's the way it is. And therefore, whatever the pshat and the sugi is, trickles down into a machlokes ladina. And therefore, the Beis Yosef says, Safek brachas lahakol, because it blives the sveika dedina, and Safek brachas lahakol. That's what the Beis Yosef would seem to hold. Similarly, the Bach also addresses this question, what do you do alamaisa when you have the three-way machlokes about possible bekisnin? He brings the Beis Yosef that says Safek brachas l'kula, and he doesn't understand the Beis Yosef. What do you mean Safek brachas l'kula? It's a question of bracha levatala. When it comes to bracha levatala, if the question of not making a bracha at all is one thing, but if the question is which bracha to make, you might be making the wrong bracha to safek a bracha levatala. How can you say safek brachas l'kula? Why is the question of the zaynis or amaiti considered a bracha a safek brachas l'kula? It's you're making a bracha either way. The question is which one. If you make the wrong bracha, it's a bracha levatala. When it comes to making a bracha levatala, we don't say safek brachas l'kula. Oh, so that's one of the terutim that they answer for the Beis Yosef. Yeah, that's one of the terutim they say. The Abed is going to be Yaitza anyway. Yeah, but the Bach backs up his kasha that later on there are other types of pas which we have a suffix about. If it has suras pas, if it's considered a suras pas altogether, over there when it's a suffix, the way we paskin is that you should be makbid only to eat it mitay chasuda. We don't say safek brachas lahakal and eat it with a mezainis. We say eat it mitay chasuda, avoid the shaila. Do you see when it comes to such a suffix, we don't feel it like that? So why is this any difference? So the Bach halach l'maisi he thinks he says, he argues. He says when you have one of these cases which only fits one of the categories of possible bekisnin, you should be makbid only to eat it mitay chasuda. You should wash in something else, and then eat it mitay chasuda of when you have no shaila about it, and then if it's part of the ikviyas asuda, then you wouldn't make a bracha on it. So The Bach also, he holds that there's a suffix ladina over here. It's not just a suffix in pshat in the sugya. It's a stake of the dina. What's the actual hachra? How do we feel the machlokes Beis Yosef and the Bach what to do practically speaking in such a scenario? But they both agree that we're locked into whatever the Gemara is talking about. Whatever the pshat in the sugya is, that's the halacha l'dayros also. They don't agree to the svar of the Ma'aseh Nisim. It's very perplexing. Why not? It's a milsad in the stavra. And why should it be locked in and limited to something which existed only in the times of the Gemara? That should really be Tolian. That's what it's Mustavra. Moreover, why did the Beis Yosef and the Bach actually learn the sugya this way? Why did they assume it's limited to what the Gemara talks about? Number one, why did Chazal limit it to what existed in the times of the Gemara? And who told the Beis Yosef and the Bach that's what the Gemara means? Maybe Takas Kfi Azman, Kfi Mokim. Whatever the derech is. As a matter of fact, the Ma'aseh Nisim in his Agoda, when he says his Chiddush LaHalacha, he says it specifically to address this kasha that the Beis Yosef and the Bach are talking about. And what does one do in a case where you only have one of the criteria for possible Bekisnin? And he brings the halacha that it's kapaskin and Shulchan Aruch that a person makes a very minim zaynis, and Safek Tekula is a very difficult way to understand it. Why should that affect this scenario? He says, "L'chein near l'finas daiti, kiven the Rashi kosav atam bepas kisnin. They ain't oichlin mimena rak daber muit u'machol muit." Since Rashi says the tam is because you only eat a little bit. Near mizeh the ikir tam aptur bepasava bekisnin umishum the kiven the alpas kazu ein regilim lekvayel of suda. Since such a pas the derech is not to be kvei suda on it, loy choshuv levarach alav hamoitzi v'gim lebrachos. It's all totally in the Einei Hamoira. What is something which is derech to be kavei suda? The kol shu path she'ene miderech ha'olam l'kvei of suda l'fi ra'is einov kafi the upshots of the Moira. What it looks like to him near the beinov that it's something which is not the derech to be kavei suda. Yesh din pas kisna. He's coming to address this question, this very question, and that's why he says that there really isn't a machlokes ladina. So how do we understand the Beis Yosef and the Bach and take it to practically what's an afkamina between the shitas ladina? There's another place where this question really crops up. The issue gets thornier and thicker as we go along. The Bach writes, when he's discussing this din, again, the Bach is one of the poskim that hold that we're locked into what the Gemara talks about. Nevertheless, the Bach says, "Avol im hadvash." He's talking about the shita that holds that possible bekisnin is when there are other things mixed in to the dough itself. The Bach says, "Avol im hadvash oy hashemen oy hacholov hu haroiv v'hamayim him hamiyut." There's more other ingredients in the liquid of the dvash of the isa. There's more other ingredients than water. The water is the miyut. The betalin b'miyutan. The water is bottled b'miyut. Mashma the baha kuli alma moida the yeshlam din kisnin the ein tzarich loimer and ein shamayim klal. There's no water at all. It's only a mazaynis roll. It only has nothing besides the eggs or the chalav or the shemen, and doesn't have any water. Even if there is some water, but if it's the mir, it's bottled b'miyutan. Kol is in loish b'dvash yesh lo din kisnin kuli alma moida. This is not totally in the three-way machlokes. Meaning to say, there are cases of pas which everyone agrees as a din of pas b'kisnin, you make a mezaynis on. Everyone agrees. Everyone agrees. Who says everyone agrees? If we're locked into what the Gemara talked about, if we're locked into pshat in the sugya, whatever pas b'kisnin means in pshat, that's what the halach is. Whatever was in the times of Chazal, so be it the dairis, for better or for worse, we're stuck with it no matter what. So how can we make up new hagdaris, new darim now? But if it's roiv, other ingredients, and it's only a miyat mayim or no mayim at all, then for sure it's going to be mezaynis. What do you mean for sure? No one is kivei suda on pretzels. No one's kivei suda on something that's mamula with mine sukkar, v'tavlin, shkedim. Nevertheless, if it wasn't around the times of the Gemara, so it's hamaitzi. That's it. You're stuck with what the time of the Gemara is. And all of a sudden now the Bach's coming with new hagdara, which is not mentioned in the Gemara. It's not mentioned in Chazal. And this everyone agrees to. Where are we coming from? How do we come to such a conclusion? How do we have the right to make such a conclusion? According to the Ma'aser Nisim, it goes both of the time, the place. Good. It's part of this general klal. Anything in the derech is not to be keveya. Derech is not to be keveya on something which has no water at all. But if we're stuck with the guidelines of what the pshat and the sugi is, and that's the way it is with l'dairis, where does this halacha come from? It's mamish a pliya. How do we know this halacha? Tremendous, tremendous chiddush. In a similar vein, along the same lines, Reb Moshe has an extra step. The Bach, when he talks about these mezainis rolls, as they're referred to nowadays, the mezainis rolls because they have other ingredients besides the mayim, it's roiv meiperis. Many poskim are mafakfik on mezainis rolls altogether. The Bach himself brings behemshech miu matzasi b'likutim b'shem Marab Alexander Katz v'shem ben Yitzchak Midura, that they would wash on these rolls that had roiv meiperis. They disagreed with the svar that he said earlier. But Moshe, Chela Gimel, when he's talking about Pasuk Bekisnan, he's talking about Kiddush Makam Suda, Pasuk Bekisnan, Teich Tvorov, he speaks out, he brings the machlokes about the Bach, the Marshal, the Taz, about these roiv meiperis. He speaks out, Avol mine hakekes, mine cakes, Shebim Medina Seinu, the cakes that we have in America, Vaday Gam LeMarshal v'Habach U'Dimayu Yodu Shehim Vaday Kisnan. Everyone agrees. This is for sure Kisnan. Even if you argue on this Bach's Chiddush, everyone agrees that it's Vaday Kisnan, our cakes. It's not just that the other ingredients are more than the water's bottle. It's even more than the flour. There are more sugar and other ingredients and eggs than the flour itself. If the flour is the meat, then for sure it's going to be minei kisnan, that everyone agrees it's a bar minei mezainis. Again, we're coming with a whole new Hagdara, which doesn't say in the Gemara. The Gemara talks about Pasuk Bekistan, and if you hold like the Bach and the Beis Yosef that were locked into what the Gemara was talking about, and Pshat and the Sugya is what's Kavua LaHalacha L'Dairis. So how do we have the right to make up this new Hagdara of mini cakes should be in the Seinu, and even if the Kemach is the meat, and also everyone agrees that it's Mezainis. Do we go to Ma'aser Nisim or do we not go to Ma'aser Nisim? This is the basic question that we really have to tackle. So, what it would seem from all of these poskim is that b'yasoid, everyone is really maskim to the Ma'aser Nisim Svar. Everyone really agrees that the Geder of Chazal is not limited, it's not locked in to what existed in the times of the Gemara, the actual Pirush Amilos of Pasuk Bekisnan. Everyone agrees b'yasoidai that anything that the derech is not to be kaveh on it, anything that the derech is that it's ma'achal mu'at, like Rashi says, is going to be yotza michlal pas, and it's going to have the halacha of vaymin mezainis Pasuk Bekisnan. Everyone really agrees b'yasoidai. The problem arises that if there's no qualitative difference between one min to another min, between one piece of bread and another, then it's not yotza, it's not poka mimenu l'shem ordinary pas. Yes, the derech ha'olam, if everyone decided to take something which is exactly identical, you have two chalas, you have two rolls, exactly identical the way it's made up, the ingredients, everything's exactly identical. And for some odd reason, everyone would just gather together, take a poll, we're going to decide we're going to eat this roll, not b'derech kfiyas suda. We're only going to eat a little bit of this roll. It looks, tastes, feels, ingredients-wise, it's the exact same makeup as a regular pas, as a regular roll. But for some odd reason, whatever the reason is, popularity of this world, this times in this place, they decided they're going to eat this only shloi b'derech kfiyas. If there's no qualitative difference between the two, then there's no way for it to be paka mimenu, the same ordinary paths, to be downgraded from the hamoitzi to the zainis. There has to be something qualitatively different about it that we can allow it to be yotza, at least to some degree, mechlal the shame of pas.
Garlic nuts, like garlic nuts.
Oh, this would be a big question.
They can hear me. Garlic nuts.
Garlic knots. Garlic knots would be a good example of this. So it depends. There are from the research that I've done, there are a lot of garlic knots that the ingredients themselves have oil, more oil than the average mixed into it. So it could be that even inside the ingredients, it would be diamond to one of the three cases, three categories, and it's niloisha with other ingredients as well. If one were to make garlic knots that the ingredients is the exact same dough as, let's say, a regular roll, just it's the only thing different about it is the coating afterwards, or the size of it. Only thing different about it is the size. Then this is get much more thorny, much more sticky. We're going to get to it in a minute about where this is going to fit into which category. But if you have something, presumably what we're saying now with the bach beis yosef, they're going to hold it about garlic knots. Let's say the garlic knots would be made in a way that the ingredients of the dough itself is the exact same as the challah roll. It's just made in a certain shape. I'll give you another example of this, but becoming a more popular snack. I've seen it later. They make soft pretzels, but bite size. They sell it now, bite-sized soft pretzels, not big ones. The big shape of the pretzel, classic shape of the pretzel, bite-sized little soft pretzels. And many times they're made exactly the same way as a roll would be made, but it's bite-sized. The only thing different about it than a regular challah roll is the size and maybe some the way it might be boiled first, but it's not really different than a bagel. But it's just bite size. It's the question of the size. That's all it is. Is that going to change the bracha or not? So here's where you run into the machlokes between the Ma'aseh Nisim and the Bach and the Beis Yosef. The pasha to the Bach and the Beis Yosef and the Bach is that everyone agrees b'yisrael to the Ma'aseh Nisim. Everyone agrees to the Svara. And if the derech ha'olam is not to be kaveh suda on it, it's yatsa mechlal pas. But if there's nothing qualitatively different about the etzim Suras HaPas, there's nothing different about it qualitatively, then it can't be paka, it can't be yotza mechlal pas, and it has to be a hamotzi. There has to be something inherently, intrinsically different about it in order to be able to get into this klal of possible bekisneh. Here's where we have the three-way machlokes and pshat in the sugya. And this is something which is kabul l'dairis. Kabul l'dairis is what qualitatively changes something from past. Just like we had in the previous sugyas, that is the concept of something lacking, Teresa Danama, Suras HaPas. But over there, when it's really missing Teresa Danama, when it's really missing to the nth degree of Suras HaPas, no matter what, it's going to be Mezainis, even if you're Kaveh Sudolov. There's a lower grade shinui from Suras HaPas, which is not totally different from Pas, but it is to some degree lacking in Suras HaPas. Then it's possible, it's out there, it's vulnerable to be able to lose its Shem Pas B'Negei HaMoitzi if the Derech HaOlam would be not to be Kaveh Sudolov. If it's exactly the same surah as Pas, doesn't make a difference if everyone decided not to be Kaveh Suda on it, it's Pas, because there's nothing qualitatively different about it. But if it is something to some degree qualitatively different about it, and the Derech HaOlam is not to be Kaveh Suda alav, then it'll be Bechlal, what the Ma'aseh Nisim talks about, that the Derech HaOlam, B'chol Eitz, B'chol Zman, and B'chol Makom, not to be Kaveh Suda on it, it's not going to be Ma'aseh anymore, it's going to be Mezainis.
So pizza used to be a snack, and now everyone because Kobe has supper on it. So that would make a difference now.
Right. But all of these three meaning, assuming pizza fits into mamula. Let's say pizza is the thing, that sheet of the Torah where it's mamula. So assuming according to the Taz, it's not only meaning Mesika, it's also Gvina and Basar, it fits into the category of mamula as well. So if, let's say in Eretz Yisrael, the derech is to be Kaveh Suda alav, then it's going to be Amoitzi. Let's say in America, at least it used to be that people will not be Kaveh Suda alav, whether today is true or not, another discussion. Yeah. Well, we're talking about one slice, two slices already getting to Dal Bayim. But if you're talking about when you have one slice where, let's say, Akaponim, it used to be in America, that Derech was eaten as a snack, maybe even today also, that Derech is eaten as a snack, then it's vulnerable. It has potential to be not Bechlal Pas Gomer, because there's something qualitatively different about it, because it's Mamula.
The same sheet, it's like it looks the same, it tastes the same.
Most poskim hold. Yeah, most poskim hold those shigim design Israel. Most scientific poskim say those are shigim design Israel. It's used the same. It's kamat tastes the same, and it's used, and it's usually, you're right. A lot of times together with the tuna, you're going to have the gimel dal bayim. Also, it's kamat not relevant altogether. Most poskim are not happy with design Israel altogether. There's a masham about it, but most poskim nowadays do not like the concept altogether. Right, says matzahs, yeah. Right. So this is very similar to the shaila of of the small soft pretzel. The only mile about the small matzahs is that really, min asvara, we should make hamotzi on a big matzah also, because it's something which is breakable. It's that category of possible bekisnin, the keich and yevation that are like pretzel-like. The only reason why the Ashkenazim are knowing to make hamotzi on it is because since on Pesach it's choshev, so we make hamotzi on it. So all year round we make hamotzi on it. The Svardim make a mezainis on matzah all year round. It's only on Pesach they make hamotzi on it, but all year round they make a mezainis on matzah. So over there's at least that svara also lahakol that really minadin anyway we should make a mezainis. So if it's also made in small pieces, it's derech is not to be kaveh sud on it. There's much bigger grounds to make a mezainis on it as opposed to hamotzi, because anyways it's pretzel like material, it's a breakable material, it's keich and yevation that fits to that category. The small pretzel, soft pretzels, which the only thing different about them than a roll is the size. This is, according to the Ma'aseh Nisim, maybe he'll tell you that kafi eini rois eini hamoira, that it's not dependent upon the Gdarim of what the Gemara talks about. He'll tell you to make a mezainis on it. But according to the Bach and the Beis Yosef, if there's nothing qualitatively different about it except the size, the pashas, according to them, you're going to make hamotzi on it. It's if the Shlomo Zalman says that the Welt is soimich on this Ma'aseh Nisim, the halacha people are soimich on it l'maisa. The Welt is soimich on it. If we're soimich on the Ma'aseh Nisim, then echanami is that the most l'chatchil way to be noig l'chatchila? It's hard to be soimich on it when it's connected so many the gedolei aposkim. Shlomo Zalman says the Welt is noig to be makel with it, Can't be mefakfik after minagoyim, but you can't be goyrin by someone who does it. But it's b'chlam not pashut, because it's nothing qualitatively different about it than the size. That's very schwer. The way we're understanding now the Bach and the Beis Yosef is that everyone really agrees to what the Ma'aseh Nisim says. The question is the machlokes ledina that we're taking out of the sugi is what's going to be called a shinui from the standard pass, that it's vulnerable, that it's susceptible to be able to have this new category of possible bekisnin if the derech ha'olam is not to be kaveh sudolov. So it's really like a watered down version of the sugya of Teresa Denama. Teresa Denama is something which is absolutely, no matter what, it's out of the realm of pas. And therefore, even if you eat gimel daled bayim, even if you eat mem gimel bayim, it doesn't make a difference. It's always going to be my mezainis. Possible bekisnin is three different shitas to change some degree, somewhat, the surah sapas, that it's susceptible to this halacha of mezainis if the derech ha'olam will not to be kaveh sudolov. But it's similar to that halacha, and that's where the machlokes ladina of the three machlokes of these shitas rishonim is gonna manifest itself. What's called the shini from pas. It's not a question of what the derech ha'olam is. Derech ha'olam is Yigobasa 2023. Go bust Lakewood. What are we going to do? We go bust call Medina. What a person does, what the derech ha'olam is. But when they get to that shinui, that's susceptible to have that halacha, that's totally in the three shitas, and you have to fit into one of those categories according to the Beis Yosef and the Bach. And this we can understand what the Bach is being Yosef, that when something is made without any mayim or with a niyat of mayim, the Bach holds that there it's partial, it has no tzura sapas. That it goes without saying it has no tzura sapas. That's something which is totally mufka pasa. By definition has mayim. There's no mayim. If the mayim is batal b'roiv, then it's pashut. It's not. It's a significant change from what the tzura sapas is. Rav Moshe says even if you argue on the Bach, but the cakes Shebim Medina Seinu, that even the kemach is the meat, it has more beitzim, it has more sugar and other ingredients than the kemach itself. That's pashut. It has no shaykhs to the original tzura of what passes of the Gemara, and therefore it goes without saying that if the derech ha'olam is not to be kaveh suda on it, then it's susceptible to that change, to this halacha, to fit into this category of possible bekisnim, and it's going to be it's not going to be b'chlal hamotzi, it's going to be b'chlal mezainis. That's where all of these shittas come in. Everyone beside agrees to the Ma'aseh Nisim. There's perhaps a fascinating application to this. I mentioned this the last time, but I heard over from a guy in Shmuel Felder Shlita. He said over from Pinchas Badner. Pinchas Badner Shlita, he in his sefer, he doesn't talk about it so much, but he said over, he heard that he himself went to ask Rabbi Yashiv and Rabbi Shlomo Zalman about which types of desserts a person would make a bracha on if you eat them at the end of the Suda. He went to the bakery and he filled up a bag full of all different types of cookies and cakes. And he brought his whole bag, his whole bag from the bakery of all different minim to Shlomo Zalman, and he showed him one by one each different type of cake and cookie. If a person would eat this for dessert, would he make a mezainis on it, or would he is it considered chalal b'safek brachos? And even if you eat it for dessert, you would not make a bracha on it, assuming you wash the beginning of the suda. Is it b'chalal safek pas, or is it vade pas b'kissim? Again, if we would have something which would meet all three criteria, it's something that we would know klar fit. It is brittle and it's mamula and it's also in the isa itself. It's mixed in sugar and other ingredients. You have something which meets all three ingredients. Perhaps some say that a very hard chocolate chip cookie perhaps fits into that category because it's very brittle and the isa itself has other ingredients and it's mamula with the chocolate chips. They are, or maybe a very hard chocolate bar that has chocolate inside of it. Perhaps there are certain types of a cake with chocolate inside of it. If it would be hard and it would be brittle, if it would fit all three categories, you would make a mezainis on it if you eat it at the end of the suda, because everyone agrees that pasaba bekisnin, even if you wash the beginning of the suda, you make a mezainis if you eat it for dessert. You washed on pas and you eat pasaba bekisnin for dessert, you make a mezainis on it. The reason why we don't make a mezainis on a lot of our cookies or cakes is because it's all a suffix. Maybe it's really pas, and if it's really pas, I'm ready putter for my pas that I washed on the beginning of the suda. So, but if we would know klar, if we would know klar that it's possible bekistin, then you'd make a mezainis on it. It doesn't get patted from the hamaisi in the beginning of the suda. So, if you'd find something that meets all three criteria, you'd make a mezainis. So he brought in to Rosh Zalman a bag full of different treats, delicacies, all the different cookies and cakes in the bakery. What would be the halacha if I eat this for dessert? And one after another, Safek, it's Safek, it's Safek. He would not make a mezainis. It's Safek brachas a cool. Don't make a mezainis. Don't make a mezainis. Eat it for dessert. Then when he showed him a piece of chocolate cake, Shlomo Zalman said, "This you'd make a very mezainis on. If you eat it for dessert, you make a mezainis." I don't know if it was mamish chocolate cake or if it was a brownie, what exactly the consistency was, but that's the way he said it over. The chocolate cake you make a very mezainis on. Maybe it was a brownie. I'm not sure. I think the lashon was that I heard over. He said chocolate cake, but I don't know. That was the. He packed up his whole bag of tricks, and he brought them all to Rabbi Yashiv, one after another. Safek brachas, Safek brachas, Safek brachas. When he got to the chocolate cake, Rabbi Yashiv said the same thing. Make it by many things. What's so heilig about chocolate cake? What is it? What is it about chocolate cake that's so different, that's so special? He didn't say a pshat. I didn't hear one b'shem Shlomo Zalman, not from Yashiv, not from Rebbe. I didn't hear a pshat from Bishelder. I don't know. Didn't say a pshat. But ulai, perhaps we could be matzia a pshat. Maybe we can perhaps give an understanding behind this mystery, the secret of the chocolate cake. The Beis Yosef in Siman Kuf Samech, a little later on, he brings a chiddush b'shem the Mordechai. We mentioned it last time. Because of Oid HaMordechai, v'chein ha'shoyre pita b'yayin. Someone takes a regular piece of bread and he soaks it in wine. It was baked with the intention of eating as regular bread. Afterwards, he decides that he puts to soak it in wine. Ein mevarach ha'moitzi sheyotza mitoras lechem. Hoyel v'simuk, since it became red. The doima lepasa bo bekisnin. It's doima to pasa bo bekisnin v'varach la'boy mei mezainis to mezin zayin. It's mezin, so you make a mezainis on it, but you would not make hamoitzi on it because the red wine it turned it red. The Beis Yosef adds after he brings this Mordechai, v'nira dahainu dafka bepirurin. Dafka if it's crumbs, inami beprusa she'im bo kazayas. It's more than a kazayas. Aber beprusa she'esh bo kazayas, loy. If it has a kazayas, no, you would not make mezainis, you'd make a hamoitzi on it. You take a piece of bread and you soak it in red wine, it gets downgraded from hamoitzi to a mezainis. This halacha is brought in Shulchan Aruch, Sif Yud Beis. Yesh mi she'omer shepas hashori b'yayin odoim, the Rama sticks in parentheses, red wine. Einu mevarach ela b'ay minei mezainis, u'bracha achaf me'ein sholosh. V'nira she'ein dvar v'amurim el b'pirurin oy prusas she'ein b'chalachas kazayis. Mamish, come out word for word, but he brings in the Beis Yosef, he says, he passes in the Shulchan Aruch. Now, Mishabura talks about it. Mishabura brings this, when he talks about this halacha, he says, "V'yayin odoim dafka if it's red, mishum the kivan shenis adam hapas al dei hayayin, ovid mimenu toyar lechem." He lost the tzur sapas. Avalim shora pitay b'yayin lovan, but if it's white wine, be'inan dafka sheishtan hayayin mitzurose al dei hapas ashori b'soiche galb sufidal, it has to totally melt down and just get dissolved in the water. The halacha says, he adds, I am Mishnah Berurah. V'hinei zeh haloshen odoim hoysef harama midaite al pi loshen ha-Mordechai yeshuv beis Yosef shekosef b'hil v'simuk. Loshen of the Mordechai is since it became red. Ube'emes svara zu klusha me'oid. It's a very weak svara. The kivan sha'pas adayin be'en. The pas is be'en. It's just covered over with some coating of absorbed in it some red wine. Just because a certain color they got absorbed, that's going to be lost from it, the shem lechem. Very svar klusha admo. It's a very weak svar. He doesn't get it, doesn't understand it. So it comes to Mordechai, yeah. It's Mordechai. So at the end, he brings that there's another gift in the Mordechai. Instead of hoil v'simuk, hoil v'nimek. And then it totally dissolved, totally absorbed. But the way the Ramah paskins, it's hoil v'simuk. You need yayin adam, you need red wine dafka. Has to change the color. It's very interesting. The placement of this halach in Shulchan Aruch Asif Yud Beis, which is after the sugya we learned earlier, the sugya of Tzuras HaPas, when the pas gets dispashal, or tigun, but changes Tzuras HaPas. And over there, the Tzuras HaPas is changed absolutely, unequivocally, no matter how much you eat, no matter what, it loses the Tzuras HaPas, the gamri, the kol. And later on, it's brought in Sif Yud Beis. This halacha, amongst those halachas, that's where this is brought. But the lashon of the Mordechai that we quoted, which isn't mentioned over here in Shulchan Aruch, the Mordechai doesn't say that it loses Tzuras HaPas absolutely. The Mordechai's lashon is doim lepas above bekisnin. Meaning to say, the Mordechai is moida that you're not going to lose Tzuras HaPas just because something was colored a red color. To make it lose Tzuras HaPas absolutely to the point, to the extent, to the degree that you're not going to make a hamoti on it ever. You're never going to bench on it to that degree, is masking. It's doim lepas above. What does it mean it's doim lepas above bekisnin? What he means, doim lepas above bekisnin, is that there's a madrega of losing Tzuras HaPas, which is not an absolute wipeout. And not an absolute bittul Tzuras HaPas to the extent that you're never going to make hamotzi on it, you're never going to bench on it. There's a lower grade madrega of ibn Tzuras HaPas. To lose the Tzuras HaPas to the degree that it's susceptible to the minig ha'ilam if the belt is noyig to be kaveh sudolov. That's what he means to pass above bekisnan. It's not a total wipeout. It is pass. It has a shame pass on it. If you could be yaitza matzah, you could be yaitza. It could be chayv and chalam deraisa. It's called pass, but it's enough different from what the velt from what the standard tzura pass is, that if the velt is noyig not to be kaveh sudolov, which is the case in this type of meichel, when a person soaks his bread in the wine, then it's going to be a bayim that's going to be downgraded. That's what's dimmed to Tzuras HaPas. The Beis Yosef adds that if you have pas gomer that already was baked as a regular pas, and you want to change it afterwards, lo yimotzinu that it's possible to undo an already existing shem pas unless it's pachas mikazayis. Just like we find by Bishul, that if you make a full-fledged pas and you want to be ma'abed b'men Tzuras HaPas, the only way you can lose Tzuras HaPas is only when it's pachas mikazayis. So too, this new mahalach and changing an already existing shem pas, you want to downgrade it from hamoti to mezainis. You're right, we're not downgrading it full-fledged downgrade. We're not taking away Tzuras HaPas absolutely to the point where you're never going to make hamoti on it, even if you're going to be kaveh suda. You're right, we're not going to do that. But the concept of taking a already made pas that already got a shem pas and being ma'abed ben Tzuras HaPas, lo yimotzinu that you can accomplish such a thing unless it's pachas mikazayis. So just like when the absolute downgrade of bishul needs that it's pachas mikazayis, When it's more than a kazayas, it's impossible to be mafkia b'menu shem pas. So too, when you're dealing with something, a downgrade from regular pas to pas above bekisnin, also it's impossible to effect that downgrade unless you're starting with something which is pachas mikazayas. Leimet sinu that a pas gomer can lose the shem pas unless you have pachas mikazayas. So Dr. Beis Yosef, the only way you can do this to accomplish this halach of the Mordechai is only when you're dealing with pachas mikazayis. That's why the Beis Yosef places it in Sif Yud Beis after he talks about the halachas of bishul changing the surah sapas. Just like when you take an existing pas and you want to downgrade it, it has to be pachas mikazayis. So to the Mordechai halacha, I hold that it's only applicable if he's starting with the pachas mikazayis. But where does it land you at the end of the day? Not with bishul or tigan or those ibetzuras that pass where you b'chlal not pass altogether and you never make hamotzi. It lands you at possible kissing at the end of the day. But the guidelines of when it's possible to do such a thing is similar to bishul, that it has to be pachas mikazayis. Is perhaps this is really where ulai, that's where Yasher, Shlomo Zalman, where they're coming from with chocolate cake. The difference of chocolate cake and all other cakes is chocolate looks very, very different than pas. The same way it's possible to lose the tzurus of pas to some degree by changing its color from regular white to red, with soaking in the red wine. When you change the color to black, to brown, you change it into the color of chocolate cake. It's the color itself has the ability to downgrade it from regular pas to pas above bekisnin. Now, the Biur Halacha is not happy with this halacha of Mordechai. The svara klusha ad moed, the very, very weak svara, that just because you change the color, it's going to change from regular pas to pas above bekisnin or to ma'abed ben etzuras alechem. But the lashon of the Biur Halacha, why? What is klusha about it? Svara zu klusha moed the kivan cha pas adayin ben the chi b'shvil seva ba'alma shekolat hapas al dehayayin. An outside absorbed color change, that's an artificial color change from the outside in. Something that's made color that way, something that's baked made color with the color of black or brown, whatever other color it's going to be, that's going to change the tzur of the pas. That could be the Biur Halacha's maskim to. It's not a svara klusha ad moed. You take ready-made pas and make it absorb from the outside in, a seva of wine, of bread, and that's going to change the tzur of the pas. It's a svara klusha ad moed. But if that's the way it's baked made color, that's the way it's made color, you're talking moed that there will be masking to the svara of the Mordechai. We'll be masking to the Ramah that's going to downgrade it from regular pas to pas of bekisnin. And perhaps this maila will even affect the halach of the Beis Yosef that you need to have a kazayis, less than a kazayis. The Beis Yosef holds that Mordechai halach only applies when it's pachas mikazayis. Why did the Beis Yosef hold that way? That's only because it already had a shame pass on it from beforehand. With already chal on a shame pass, and you want to be mavatal mimenu shame pass, here the Beis Yosef holds that just like when it comes to bishul, when it comes to being ma'abed and tzuras pass mikol v'kol, the only way you can affect that is only if you're starting off with pachas mikazayis. So too, over here, when you want to change the color, you have to be starting off with the pachas mikazayis. But if that's the way it's made meikara, that's the way meikara is built in, that it's something which has different in its surah because of its color change, together with all the other shinuyim, because of the taste, then everyone's masking. You don't have to have pachas mikazayis. Even if you start out with the kazayis, that's the way it's baked meikara, with that color change, with that all the shinuyim that there are in chocolate cake, topping it all off with that color change, then everyone can be masking to this halacha of the Mordechai. Even though it is a kazayis, it's not going to be a bay mezainis, it's going to be a possible bekistin, it's only going to be a bay mezainis, it's not going to be hamaitzi, and you make a bracha on at the end of the suda. This perhaps will be the understanding behind this chiddush of chocolate cake. What's different about it is this haka looks different. It looks different. Perhaps it fits into this halacha if few days, and everyone would agree to it. Even the halachas pekpukim wouldn't apply. That you'd make a bay mezainis on the holidays. Perhaps that's where it's coming from. So practically speaking, halacha l'maisa, what we're coming out is that if you're dealing with soft pretzels, and it's increasingly popular nowadays. Now they make, you see a lot of times bechasnas, they make pretzel rolls. It's really the same size as the roll totally. The only thing different about it is the outside is more browned, and the way they make the pretzels is they immerse them in something else. First, they similar to what they make the way they make a bagel. First, they boil them with some other ingredients to make that outer coating flavor, that taste of like that pretzel taste, and then it's baked. So if it looks exactly the same as a roll, it's very, very difficult to understand why anyone would make a mezainis on it. If it looks exactly the same size as a roll. Will that outside coating, that it's a little bit discolored, now that it looks a little bit that pretzel type of coating, is that going to be mashana the tzura to the degree that it's going to downgrade it to mezainis? Not mustaver. Question is, when you make the big soft pretzel and you make it in that shape of the pretzel, is that enough of a shini atzura that now if the derech ha'olam would be not to be kaveh suda on a pretzel? Would that downgrade it from hamoitzi to hamazainis? And these small soft pretzels that they sell now, where it's exactly the same material as a roll, exactly the same way it's made, just smaller, would that be downgraded from hamoitzi to mazainis? According to the Ma'aseh Nisim, perhaps it will be. The Ma'aseh Nisim holds that we go kakol kfi rois in hamoira, whatever the derech is. We're not locked in whatsoever to the three gedarim of the Gemara. Perhaps it would be. And if Shlomo Zalman says that the minig olim is b'soymich on it, so perhaps it will be mezainis. But according to many poskim, the Bach, namely the Beis Yosef and the Bach, they have poskim who are locked into the gedarim of the Gemara, that the only way to take away the surah sapas is by making a qualitative difference. Leimatzinu, that the size of something or the shape of something should be a qualitative difference. It's not one of the three shitas. Ad kan lo shamanu, what Ramosha says, that if it's roiv other ingredients over the kemach, or to take it a step further to what the Bach says when there's the meat mayim, to that extent perhaps, but just the fact that there's a different shape, different size, it's very, very difficult to understand how you'd be able to take it down according to the Bach and the Beis Yosef. According to the Ma'aseh Nisim, perhaps. But to be soymich on that, it's not so simple to be soymich on it.
I saw on the store shelves, pretzel chalos. That's the name. With salt in there, a package of salt.
Also to put it on. Yeah, it's very schwer to downgrade it to a mezainis. It's very, very hard to understand how you can downgrade it to a mezainis when it's mamish the same size. Also, take the Ma'aseh Nisim to the coating of it. I don't know. It's a very, very big stretch. Just wanted to be Messiah with just a thought about really ties into possible Bekisnin. It has to do with the parsha. The difference between Kaveh Suda Olav to eat Gimel Dalad Bayim, according to some Shitas Mem Gimel Shlish Bayim, how much you have to eat to be Kaveh Suda to turn it into a Pas Gomer. If you eat a little bit, not Derech Kaveh Suda, and a Mezainis. If you eat a lot, large amounts, large quantities, and it turns into a Kaveh Suda. It really ties into an idea that's alluded to by Ramban in this week's parsha. The Shulchan, it had a Zer Zov surrounding it. One of the Kalim in the Mishkan that had a Zer Zov surrounding it. Rashi tells us what is the symbolism of the Zer Zov Soviv. Dr. Rashi, Simin the Keser Malchus. Shah Shulchan Shem Oisher Gdulahu. K'moshe Oimrim Shulchan Malachim. The Shulchan is representative of Oisher Gdula, Shulchan Malachim, of wealth, Parnasa. That's what it represents. So the Zer Zov is symbolic of the Keser Malchus. That's what's represented, that's what's depicted by the Zer Zov around the Shulchan. The Ramban, he quotes this Rashi, and he adds, Shezeh Soid HaShulchan, Ki Birchas Hashem me'eis hayois ha'olam lo nivru yesh me'ayin. From the day of Sheshes HaRav and on, there's no Bria Yesh Me'ayin. We're just working with the system that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. Aval lo'olam kimin hagay noyig. D'chsiv hayar l'kim et kol asher asa v'nei tov moed. Aval kasher yeh sham shoirish davar, when you're dealing with something that's in existence already, and it's a shoirish of something bigger, something more plentiful, more numerous. When you're dealing with the shoirish, then tochalalav habracha v'toisef boy. If you have the shirish already, it's not a yesh me'ayin. You have the yesh already, then you can be meichel a bracha on it to be meisef peribu in it. Kasher amar Elisha, hagidili ma yesh lach baboyis. She told the Isha, you have an osuch shemen, you have a little bit of shemen. From that shirish, we can be marbet, make a ribu in it, and that little osuch shemen produced kalim and kalim full of shemen. Same thing we find by Eliyahu. When he was walking, the days on end, kad kemach lekolsa v'tapach Hashem lechaser. You have a little bit, you can deal with it. You have a little bit of a shirish. It could be a ribui. It could be a bracha that's chal on it. V'chein hashulchan melechem aponim. The same thing as the shulchan lechem aponim. Boy tochal abracha. Umimenu yavai hasoiva l'chol Yisrael. L'kach amru kol kayin shemagia kapul oichel b'saveya. The shulchan, it's lechem aponim. From there came out the bracha to all the world of parnasa. That little bit of lechem on the shulchan. From there, from the avodah that we did with it, came out the bracha of shefa parnasa to the ganze Welt. So, we had a shulchan, we had the avodah shulchan, we had that little bit of kimmah, that little shirish, from whence the entire bracha of parnasa for the ganze Welt came out. What about nowadays? We don't have the shulchan, we don't have the lechem aponim. Yes, we have a little bit Nishalma Parms for Seinu, someone who's Isaac in the halachas, someone who's Isaac in the sugyas, as if he was Mekayim it. And there's no question, Bisman, the Beis HaMikdash is not Kayim to some degree that there is a kilkel in the tzinoris of the Shefa, Brach, and Parnasa that we have. But what is the world standing on today's day and age when we don't have that Shulchan Malachim, we don't have the Avodah of the Lechem Aponim? So Ramban is really Miramaz to where it comes from nowadays. Kol kayin shemagiyai kipul oichel v'saveya. There's a tremendous ness and bracha that happened with the lechem upon him. A kayin got a little tiny piece of the lechem upon him. He was oichel kima and was b'sparach b'meyav. There is where you see the bracha that's niskayim, when you have a little shirish with the ribuy bracha. Ribui happens in two different forms. There's a ribui in kamas, there's a ribui in echos. HaRav writes, we say in Kriyashma, that the bracha for an animal is that it should be plentiful. There should be a lot to eat. The bracha for a human being is v'yachalta v'savata. You should be able to be sustained upon a little piece, a little bit of eichel. The biggest bracha there is by human being is to be oichel kimam with barach b'meyav. When you're dealing with an animal that's kulei chumri, the bracha is that it should have a lot to eat. That's what an animal does. An animal is chumri. It eats and eats and eats. The more it eats, the better. The bigger the bracha is. A person is ikrei bel yoinim. A person is the ikra of a person is neshama. Not a chilish to you. Yes, we're intertwined with a guf, and we need that sustenance to keep us going. So we have to eat. The biggest bracha is that we should eat a little bit and it should be nisbarach b'meyav. V'yachalta v'savata, and it should be nisbarach b'meyav is the biggest form of bracha. Not to have to eat a lot. That's the biggest bracha. The biggest bracha is not to have to eat the mem gimel bayim. The biggest bracha is not to have to eat the dal gimel or dal bayim, the kviya suda. The biggest bracha is to be oichel kimam nisbarach b'meyav. That's the biggest bracha. That's the biggest bracha. How is a person zeicha to that bracha? Chazal will give us the answer. It's a Gemara. Baskol goes out. The Baskol says that Kala Olam Kulim is Nizan B'Shvil Chanina B'ni. The Chanina B'ni is Dailoi Kav Kruvim Erev Shabbos Erev Shabbos. The ganze Welt is Mizbarach B'Shvil Chanina B'ni. What does it mean B'Shvil Chanina B'ni? Chaim Volozhin that brings from the Shlach Kodesh. B'Shvil is a lotion of a road. Shvil like a derech. The ganze Welt is Mizbarach through the tzinoris, the shvil of Chanina B'ni. Why? When there's a person out there who's mistapik memuit, he's happy with what he has. He's nizan with it, just a little bit of kav, kruv, erev Shabbos, erev Shabbos. It's all of the shefa bracha that's supposed to be coming to him. Instead of coming to him, it goes to the rest of the world. That shvil, that pathway through which the shefa of bracha would come, if that tzaddik who's zeicha, that tzaddik who's mistapik memuit, if he'd take it all for himself, so then the world will be left with nothing. It's only because he's mitzamtzim, and he takes that kruv, that kav kruv me'erev Shabbos le'erev Shabbos, he leaves off the rest for the rest of the world. That's where the bracha in this world is chal. Whenever there's a mistapik memuit, Belapian says, Pesach es yodecha u'masbia l'chol chai rotzim. The pasuk should say, Pesach es yodecha u'masbia l'chol chai mozain. Why does it say Ratzon? When a person is mistapik b'muad, he's sameach b'chelka, he's happy with what he has. That's the biggest bracha. Through that when a person has the svias ratzon from the sameach b'chelka, that's what enables the shvil of Chanina B'ni to be mefarnes and be made in the ganze Welt. It's the tzaddikim that are mistapik b'muad and the sameach b'chelkam, they are the individuals who really have mefarnes the Welt. The avodah of the shulchan that we have as man hazeh is the Chanina B'nis. The shulchan, what took place on that shulchan was that there was a little bit of lechem, there was a kapul that went to each kohen, that he was sameach b'chelkai. Through that sameach b'chelkai, through that avodah, the ganze Welt had a parnasa. It was misbarach to everyone else. The Chanina B'nis of today's day and age, the sameach b'chelkai, is the ones that just siphon off a little bit of that shvil that's headed toward themselves, and all they need is that little iota. They need that little kazayas to make a bayim resignis on when it comes to possible bekisnin. If he suffices with that, then the rest of that shvil, the rest of that shefa parnasa, gets siphoned off, and it gets dispensed throughout the entire world to all of to all the rest of us. To be zeicha to that bracha through his avodah of the shulchan, to be satisfied with that pull, and not to have to eat it all up, not to take it all for himself. Ulai, that's the lashon of Chazal. Chanina B'ni dailoi, that kav kruv, from what? The erev Shabbos le'erev Shabbos. That's the lashon erev Shabbos le'erev Shabbos. Erev Shabbos, that's the time when they baked the lechem upon him. That's when the time the avodah lechem upon him began. The Erev Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, instead of the Lechem Aponim, we don't have it nowadays. We have the Avodah of the person who's Sameach B'chelka, the person who's Mistapik B'muit. He doesn't need to have so much. That's the way the Welt gets the Parnasa, the Shefa Parnasa, that the Shulchan was able to accomplish by the time the Beit HaMikdash Hayekayim. That's the true crown of the Kesem Malchus. The true crown of how it's Mefarnas the world through the Avodah of Sameach B'chelka to be Mistapik B'muit. Maybe she's helping. We shouldn't have to come on to the Mem Gimel Bayim. We shouldn't have to come on to the Gimel Adalad Bayim. We should be mistopic with the amount that we need to have just to make a Bayim in Mizayim to pass the Bekisnin. Through that, we should be Zeicha to have Pas Gomer Shefa throughout the ganze Welt. Kein Nosson.